Hi, Dr. Austin. How are you today?
Great. Hi, Dr. Lewis. How are you?
Good. So what is it? It's Thursday, February what, 28th, 29th?
28th. I think that's right. Yes.
Yeah, 2020. And of course, you sound the alarm a while ago about this coronavirus, not something that we should just poo-poo. And of course, the higher ups in China and the United States are kind of poo-pooing at this. And we did a video on this on preventative measures for coronavirus about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now. So, but you want to give us an update on your philosophies on what's going on with the coronavirus, where it stems from, and what do you think might happen from a health perspective? And I know you even have a financial perspective on this as well.
Yeah. So, as some people may know, the video that was on my YouTube channel was censored by YouTube. So I'll repeat some of the same things I said before, and people now are becoming more aware of what's happening, and within a month or two, I think it's going to be obvious what's going to happen or what's happening. And so this coronavirus, it's a big deal. And I think the reason my YouTube the YouTube video got censored last time was because I made some I discussed some research on herbal antiviral compounds. And so I'll just say, this video is not, I'm not giving any specific advice for anybody for treatment of coronavirus. We'll just talk about things in a theoretical standpoint. But the coronavirus is a big deal. And this is probably going to be the biggest worldwide pandemic that we've seen since the 1918 Spanish flu. The Spanish flu swept through the world over 18 months in 3 different waves. And it was so bad that we had to cancel World War I because there weren't enough soldiers who were healthy enough to fight the war. We had to put the World War off another 20 years. That killed 50 million people, the Spanish flu did. The coronavirus is potentially maybe less fatal in a per case basis, although we're working with incomplete information. But this thing is incredibly transmissible. And people have been lulled into a false sense of security because of the false data coming from China. China's been hiding the numbers. They're claiming, 80,000 cases or so. And almost everybody agrees that the numbers are much, much higher than that. We don't have a full knowledge of what the numbers are. Probably 800,000, maybe more.
And you said that you've seen video of people in Korea and China literally dying on the streets.
Yeah, so people just falling over in China and now in South Korea and now in Iran. People are lulled into a false sense of security thinking, okay, it's only the elderly who are being affected and dying. But this virus has a critical complication rate that requires hospitalization and an ICU bed in about 20% of the cases that
and what are they treating it with in that situation?
The only proven treatment right now is supportive, which is when your breathing fails, you require a ventilator, an intubation and a ventilator to support your breathing until you either recover or die. And here's the issue, Tom, is that countries don't have hundreds of thousands of ICU beds and ventilators sitting around just spare. I mean, we have ventilators and ICU beds. Most of them are being used. When you get a sudden influx of critically ill patients, it overwhelms the healthcare system and people just die. And that's what happened in China, particularly in Wuhan. That's why we think the fatality rate was higher in Wuhan than elsewhere in China, is because that hospital system got overwhelmed.
Well, there are talks about a $4 billion influx from the government and $8 billion. Is that enough to, we need to manufacture these ventilators. They're not just sitting on the shelves waiting for someone to purchase them. So
this is a disaster, a potential disaster of biblical proportions. I don't say that lightly. I'm not Dr. Doom. I want to be upbeat, and I don't want to freak people out. But I want to, toward the end of the video, I want to give people some specific information about what they can do, not just run around and flip out about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'll be honest. I'm a little bit I'm worried about this for myself, for my family, for my community, for my country, and for the world. Uh, this has come upon us suddenly. It's a black swan event. So these black swan events are unexpected, but they're game changers. And so the virus is bad, but also equally bad is the effect on our economy. So the stock markets, global stock markets, and debt markets were all in a hyper bubble leading up to this, the longest bull run in history. Everybody just, we've been through there's bull and boom, there boom and bust cycles that occur and recur. We had the 2001, internet bubble. We had the 2008 global financial crisis. You look back to that occurred because some people defaulted on their home loans, and that's what could potentially happen this time. People are going to default on their loans. Starting in China, the small businesses there, 60% of them have only enough cash for 1 or 2 months. Okay, and if you sell stuff in China and people aren't coming to buy your stuff there at your little shop, you're going to have to lay people off and you're going to default on your loans. And the people those banks are going to default, and this default wave can sweep through the globe. People don't understand how bad this can potentially be. So this could create a worse global financial collapse than what we had in 2008. And the governments will try their best not to let that happen. So what they're going to try to do is flood the markets with liquidity, with quantitative easing, lowering interest rates, negative rates, and printing money out of thin air, which is going to devalue any currency that you own. So if they have a choice between a global financial collapse and hyperinflation, the government's going to choose hyperinflation. They're going to try to inflate their way out of this problem. I don't know that they'll be successful. I don't. So again, I'm not an economist, but I've been delving into this a little bit. This is a black swan event. I'm not saying that for sure this is going to happen. I'm saying that there's a big risk out there that people need to be aware of. And now is a good time to be taking some risk off the table. Well, let's get back into the medical aspect of this. So this.
Right, I wanted to ask you this: that there's been talk about this emanating from bats, but you believe that, and you've seen enough data that says this is a biological weapon.
I don't want to say biologic weapon. I believe. Okay, I don't believe in coincidences. The China's premier and really only level 4 biologic research facility is located in Wuhan, China, just a short distance from where the epicenter of this outbreak. So that's coincidence number one. This biologic research center was doing research on SARS and coronaviruses and bats. And there's Zero Hedge published. You go to Zero Hedge, they've got an excellent article. I sent it to you. You might want to post that as part of this video. But they delve into this and show evidence. It's not proof, but evidence that this is where it came from. So I believe that this probably escaped accidentally. I don't think it was released intentionally. And I don't know if it was a bioweapon research or if they were trying to research vaccines. I think vaccines. I don't know. We're only the people there, that were working at that research facility would know that. But that adds to the scare factor of all this. And this thing, if you were trying to design, a bioweapon, you'd want something easily transmissible that has high fatality rate and can gum up a country's hospital system. But it looked like there was an accident, and it probably got out, and now we're going to have to deal with the consequences of our actions as humans because we were not careful.
Came out of the Boston Globe today or yesterday about 600 people who came back from China in the Boston area, and they sequestered them, and many of them have been sent home. I think over 2/3 of them have been sent home with no symptoms when they were, sequestered. But there's a group there that still is under watch.
Well, here's the thing, Tom. People are also lulled into a false sense of security. They don't believe there's community spread in the U.S. And there's not community spread in the U.S. because we're not testing like we should be in the U.S. We've only tested a little bit over 400 people in the U.S. total. As a physician, as a practicing physician, if somebody comes into me and they have classic symptoms of SARS and acute respiratory distress syndrome, I cannot test them myself. I have to request a test from the CDC, and they will not test unless the patient has come from China or has had known exposure to somebody who's known to have a positive test for coronavirus. So we are so far behind the 8 ball on this. It boggles my mind. How can we not be testing? Look at some of these other countries that have their act together. South Korea has tested thousands of people. If you want to try to prevent spread of a pandemic, you have to be testing for this thing. And I guess there were some problems with the test kit. I don't know. Maybe the truth will come out, but this is incompetence at the highest level. We got a global pandemic, and it seems to me that the powers that be are trying to downplay all this because they're trying not to have people panic, and I understand that. Yeah. But people have the right to hear the truth, and the truth, even if the truth is a scary thing. This is
a virus.
It's a virus,
and we have antivirals against certain types of viruses, but this probably has nothing that's effective against it, as you said.
So if FDA and Western medicine, their standard of care is it has to be a double-blind, placebo-controlled study that's proven to work. So there are trials underway with HIV antiviral medications and chloroquine phosphate, which is a anti-malarial medication. And we're getting anecdotal reports from China that the chloroquine phosphate seems to be working well for the SARS COVID-2 type pneumonia, but there's nothing proven to work. And Western medicine has traditionally struggled with antiviral medications. We've got some decent anti-HIV medications. There's not a lot of real good antiviral medications out there. We've always struggled to find things for the flu. We've looked for decades to find a cure for the common cold. Well, the coronavirus causes common colds. This is a mutated, probably bioengineered coronavirus that causes a cold-like symptom and also death. And there's not. It's a SARS type virus. So the SARS came out in 2003, but we could stop the spread of that because people didn't transmit that virus until they showed symptoms. This coronavirus is different. You can transmit it during the asymptomatic phase from day one. As soon as you're exposed, you can start transmitting it, we believe. You can transmit it while you're symptomatic, and you can transmit it during the recovery phase.
Now here in the Western hemisphere, we really focus on biological medicine, drugs, if you will. But in the Eastern Bloc and in some functional areas in the country, we focus on energy medicine. And step away from my mic for a second, but here's Dr. Tennant's book on healing his voltage, and what he says is if we can obtain 20 to 40 millivolts current in our cells, that kills all bacteria, viruses, fungi. So in other words, if you can balance out the alkalinity, not in your stomach, you need strong acid in your stomach, but in your bloodstream, that this actually has a profound effect. And there are energy devices that can be applied to up your potential. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Are you familiar with these techniques?
I'm not. I'm intrigued. I want to find. We got to have something quick within a month or two that people can use. That's not going to be in short supply. So ICU beds are going to be in short supply. So from a theoretical standpoint, without giving people specific advice that could be censored by YouTube, we can look to historical use of some of these herbal antivirals. And one compound they're using in China is a traditional Chinese medicine mixture of 3 herbs. It's called Xiang Huang Lian. And It's a traditional Chinese medicine that I say with the Southern Indiana accent,
Right.
but it's a mix of Japanese honeysuckle, forsythia fruit, and Chinese skullcap root in a 1:1:2 ratio. So they're pretty much sold out of it in China. They were standing up around the corner from places selling it, and they believe it to be effective. It's not been studied for this specific virus, but there are a number of herbal compounds that have been screened against the SARS virus, and we've been trying to work on a vaccine for SARS since 2003, and there's a reason we don't have one, which is that in all the testing they did, when they administer the vaccine to animals and then expose them to the wild virus, their mortality rate is higher than if they weren't vaccinated at all. So here you have a vaccine that's worse than doing nothing. So that's why there's not a vaccine. I would not hold your breath for a vaccine for this novel coronavirus anytime soon. If we look to these traditional herbal medications, there are many herbal compounds that have very potent antiviral effects. And then there's a prescription chloroquine phosphate that seems to still be available. I'm trying to stock up on it for my clinic, for my patients. With that in mind, perhaps the other herbal antiviral medications may be of benefit, something like artemisinin from wormwood. Their elderberry syrup has some activity against coronaviruses in general, and a broad range of antiviral activity against other viruses. Licorice root is found to inhibit the replication of coronaviruses. Bone set is a medication that can be used once somebody becomes symptomatic to downregulate the inflammation and stop the fever, and that's one thing that occurs with this virus. You seem to either get a very mild illness, like for children, but in older people and certain other people, we don't know why, even younger people at 30s and 40s, they can go into this cytokine storm where they get a marked inflammation in the lungs fill with fluid, and they have respiratory failure. That's what you want to try to interrupt. So we also know that the medicinal mushrooms have potent antiviral properties. I'm a fan of using more than one mushroom. I think more mushrooms are always better, but a combination of something like cordyceps, maitake, shiitake, turkey tail, reishi, and agaricus blazei is a compound I use for my flu patients with very good anecdotal results. It seems to take the flu from 6 days to 2 days.
Are any of these products, are you formulating them, or are they purchasable OTC over the counter?
I am working on a formulation of the Xiang Huang Lian, and I've got a friend who is a traditional Chinese medicine.
What I need you to do is send me ingredients or names or things like that, so I can post it as part of this video, because I'm not going to be able to reproduce that.
Right. Yeah, I can do that. But yeah, the medicinal mushrooms I just listed are available, and I'm not going to mention any products or anything.
Yeah, I'm not chiming in on treatment now, because last time we talked about, the traditional things you do to boost your immune system, which we do.
We're just talking from a theoretical standpoint. We're not making, again, this is not medical advice. Contact your own doctor about recommendations for coronavirus. We're just speaking. The truth is what we're trying to do. So,
obviously, vulnerable populations are most affected. And I recommend people get a blood test to see where they are on their health disease continuum, because that's going to tell you a little bit about your vulnerability. We don't know if it'll guard, if you change that, where you are on that continuum, if it'll help you against this virus. But at this point, people should take their health seriously, because if you thought you were vulnerable to diabetes, that's pretty benign compared to the coronavirus.
Well, studies are showing that the people who die from the coronavirus have comorbidities, primarily diabetes or cardiovascular disease.
Absolutely.
And if you know the coronavirus is coming to a town near you, and it's going to be here in a month or 2 or 3, now would be an excellent time to get your diabetes under control. Or if you're pre-diabetic, move out of that direction. And there are ways to do that with success. And as you know, the pilot program we worked in, we had 70 people. 69 of the 70 lowered their hemoglobin A1C by a significant amount, usually half a point, I think it was. That's a phenomenal result. So there are things people can do. And I think things we did were a lot of dietary counseling, cutting out the sugar and the wheat, cod liver oil, vitamin D supplementation, because most people are deficient in vitamin D, improving gut health with fermented foods. Berberine is a root herb that can help lower hemoglobin A1C or blood sugars. I'm a fan of the oyster mushrooms for that purpose. Also, and there's a lot of herbal compounds that can be used from a theoretical standpoint to lower blood glucose, including triphala, Chinese bitter melon, and others. And in many cases in my practice, I'll use a combination of things along with dietary counseling to help bring down.
And today, for people who can do it, but companies are being funded to help people do this, is the intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet, where really what you're trying to do is get the glucose out, get your insulin more sensitive, and that, I think, is profound at creating resilience, as well as, digestion's a very energy intensive process. So if you're trying to fight something, that's why you don't feel hungry when you're sick generally, is because, your body is putting resources towards fighting the infection, fighting whatever you're trying to overcome. So, when
from a purely theoretical standpoint, Tom, we know that when you go through a period of fasting for 3 days or so, that your body sloughs off the old senescent immune cells. And then when you begin to eat again, it stimulates the production of the new immune cells from the bone marrow. And what we know about the coronavirus is that these young kids don't die from it. They have a vigorous young immune system. Older people are dying from it. Could it make sense from a theoretical standpoint that if you know the coronavirus is coming, maybe you want to do some fasting to regenerate your immune system so you can be ready, so you can have a young, vigorous immune system when this virus hits.
Right.
So with that in mind, we're 2 days into Lent, and I've made the vow I'm gonna go every day and not eat till dinner. I'm gonna have one meal, and during that meal, no bread and no sugar.
Right.
No alcohol during all of Lent, and we'll see. And last year I made it 2 days, so I'm at day 2 now this year. So I think I'm
support, Dr. Ross, and I can help you with that. But I was just invited to the 10th anniversary of a church in Johnson City, Tennessee. And the members of that are members of my health ministry program, that I just basically a Christian health-based teaching program. And the pastor, who has glaucoma, about my age, did a 50-day fast, not a complete fast, but really very strict on what he was bringing in for protein, very low carbs, healthy fats, but really minimizing over a 50-day period. And we went back and retested his eyes with his ophthalmologist. His pressure went from 20 roughly, which is, borderline high, to 8 in both eyes. So, and the only thing he did was do the long-term fasting. I don't want to really call it a calorie restriction. I don't have the full details on it, but he really looked at it as more of a biblical fast. And obviously you don't want to avoid minerals and certain nutrients which you lose on a daily basis, so he was replenishing with that. But from a caloric perspective, he was clearly in a fast, and he lost I think 18 pounds and got down to his ideal weight.
Well, I think fasting is profoundly beneficial for many people. It's fairly safe. I saw a study where they looked at the safety of it, and I think there were a few hundred people in the study, and there were like 2 elderly people who ran into some trouble. Mainly the 2 people got dehydrated. One of them had pre-existing hyponatremia that wasn't diagnosed. The other one had another serious medical problem, like a cancer, that wasn't diagnosed.
Yeah.
And, you know, there can be benefits from a spiritual standpoint, but also from a healing standpoint. I had a gentleman, I didn't tell him to do it, but he did a 21-day water fast. And of course, when you fast that long, you don't want to immediately begin eating. You can get a refeeding syndrome that can be dangerous. So you kind of have to take a day or two where you're drinking some bone broth and maybe a celery stalk or something and kind of ease back into it. But all his problems went away. His back pain went away. His depression went away. His fatigue went away. And it was all solved by the end of his fast. So it was pretty amazing to see.
Well, Dr. Austin, I'd like to end this on the coronavirus. I mean, obviously, you've said what you said. There's a major concern. People need to look at their financial resources, look at their food resources, and look at their health resources. And
yeah, so health resources, some herbal stuff. Look around and find some herbal things, and from a theoretical standpoint, but also it makes sense. And the CDC came out and said, you know, this is coming. It's not a matter of if, but it's when, and you want to be prepared. So look at what happened in China when things were shut down, and think about what would I need if things are shut down for an extended period of time. And I would assume a 3-month shutdown, maybe more. I mean, if you want to, you know, how much does it cost to get some dried food with a long shelf life? It doesn't cost that much to get 3 months of dried food. So get it now while you can, while prices are low and while it's still available.
Yep.
Because you have a limited time. I don't know when it's coming. We probably already have community transmission in the U.S. that is going on under our noses, and this thing is going to go exponential. It's going to go viral here like it already is doing worldwide. So
just like the internet. That's where the word comes from.
That's right.